the first thing I did was actually observe. That's really where I spent most of my time. I quit a well-paying job and decided to just travel and visit with friends and family in different parts of Asia. And in the airports, I would just sit and observe, and I started taking notes on what different challenges I saw from the service standpoint. I would talk to a few of those passengers and ask them, "Hey, everyone's left the gate. You guys are left by yourselves. Are you anxious?" And almost every elderly person I spoke with were like, "We are petrified because we need to get to the US and we don't know where the next boarding gate is." Somebody spoke to
Wow.
us in clearly English, but they spoke it too fast with an accent, and we have no idea what's going on. We'll just wait for the service provider to come back and cart us to the next gate. This was almost across the board, something I saw in the Singapore airport, in the Tokyo Narita airport, Haneda airport, Chennai and Bangalore. It was very common in these airports where you would have elderly passengers who needed to get from point A to point B, and they were struggling. And these are large airports, generally speaking. So just walking around to the closest display panel was not obvious. So in some sense, that was my first instantiation of the customer. I still hadn't gotten to the point. In the back of my mind, a smart wheelchair was there all the time, right? So I'll be lying if I said I didn't have a pre-baked solution waiting there. But my pre-baked solution was honestly just an electric wheelchair. My pre-baked solution didn't consider the service provider's needs. It didn't consider things like short-term rides. It didn't consider things like, hey, self-redeploy. All those weren't built into this. So
Right.
as I talked to the service providers, it became totally clear, and we had very candid conversations. These are all off the record kind of conversations we had with them. Most of them stopped talking once they realized that, oh man, I'm giving away too much information to this random guy who clearly is a traveler, but he's asking me really peculiar questions. I would ask, how many rides do you give a day? How many per hour? Are there peak seasons up and down? Obviously, I would know what the minimum wage is, and you can tell from somebody's job satisfaction whether they're actually looking for a bump in their salary or not,
Right.
and how they interact with the passengers. So I spent quite a bit of time with these service providers and slowly went up the proverbial ladder in their companies and talked to the regional directors and their vice presidents. And without a doubt, as I morphed the feedback from these elderly passengers that I was talking to into the concept of electric wheelchair, including things like ergonomics, including interactive display, including the ability to not bump into obstacles, including the ability to self-redeploy. Every agency I spoke with, their first question was, what's it going to cost? And in my mind, having built products all the way through, cost is a part of the equation. It's one variable in your equation. You cannot not talk about cost.
Right.
But they were seeing me more as a technologist, and they were concerned that this was going to be really expensive. Because in all candor, there has been one company that has shopped around an autonomous wheelchair in the past. And their entry point was just too high. The capex needed just to deploy one wheelchair was just too high. And everybody just shot it down. So their concern was, okay, you're talking about all these features. You haven't built anything yet. Here's a company that has some of these features. They've built something. They're crazy expensive. You're doomed from the get-go.
Right.
So I came back home. I talked to a handful of friends who I've worked with in the past. Some decided to join me on the journey, working part-time. Me, without an income, just sitting at home, burning away our savings. We started sketching things out. We started building a system architecture. I started talking to suppliers who could potentially supply us. And we made deliberate choices so far along the way that we invent only those things that we need. We are not going to invent a motor. We're not going to invent a motor controller. We're not going to invent a display. We're not going to invent a wheelchair. what we're going to do is borrow from all existing, really mature fields and be a good system integrator. So that's really where we've spent most of our time, just researching what's available there. What can I get for, honestly, dirt cheap? What can I borrow from a parallel industry where the same components are available for a lot cheaper, and from multiple sources, not just the medical wheelchair company space that is already bloated in many ways.